Welcome to the Virtual Roadshow series presented by Channelchek and Noble Capital Markets. Of the 6,000 small and micro-cap companies listed on Channelchek, today we're featuring ACCO Brands, NYSE ticker symbol ACCO. Research coverage of ACCO Brands is provided by Noble Capital Markets. Noble is a FINRA-licensed, SEC-registered broker-dealer. All Noble research is available on Channelchek. Following the formal presentation, Joe Gomes, Noble's senior research analyst covering ACCO Brands, will ask our presenter a selection of the questions received during the broadcast. And now, here is Boris Elisman, President and CEO of ACCO Brands, to make the presentation. Boris, take it away.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon and good morning, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you to Joe Gomes and to the Noble team to give us the opportunity to speak with you for the next 25 minutes or so about our company, ACCO Brands. I will go through the presentation and then I'll take your questions. The first couple of slides that you now get to see on your screen is the typical disclosure that we have to provide. This is forward-looking statements and non-GAAP financial measures. And you can go to our website to see more of the detail behind each one of these. Let me start with a brief overview of our company. As I mentioned, the company is ACCO Brands. We design, market, and manufacture consumer and end-user demanded products used in businesses, school, and homes. You can see some of the highlights from our 2019 year end. The company has been around for a long time and survived and prospered many different trends, incarnations, political regimes, and here we are in 2020 and still going strong. On the lower left-hand side, you see our revenue by region. We are very well diversified across global geographies with strong presence in the US as well as in Europe, but also an increasing presence in other parts of the world. And then on the lower right-hand side, you see our product categories by percent of revenue. And you can see that we're also very well diversified from a category standpoint, able to serve our customers and consumers with just one touch point. In these product categories, we serve them under different brands depending on geographies. You can see here, for example, for school products, if you're in the US, you probably are familiar with 5-Star and Mead. But their counterparts in Brazil would be Telebra, and in Canada, for example, would be Hilroy. These brands command typically number 1, sometimes number 2 market share positions in their categories. They are well known, well recognized, and strong market leaders. Most of our brands are regional. We have a couple of brands that are global. GBC is global, Kensington is global, Derwent is global, but the rest of the brands really appeal to a particular country or a particular region. They have a history of being in that particular country or region for many, many years. They have strong brand equity and strong loyalty from the consumers. The top 12 brands represent about 75% of our sales, and these brands are depicted on the lower left-hand side. On the right side, you see all of the major customers that we sell our products through. We're well distributed. Our channel strategy is to be channel agnostic. We sell where end users want to buy, and that includes all of the major chains, major distributors, major independents, as well as online retailers and our own direct-to-consumer way of selling. If you look at the revenue and profit segmentation of the business, you can see that the business is fairly well balanced between North America, EMEA, and international in terms of revenue and profitability. And then from a growth standpoint, we believe that in a normal environment, and certainly we're not in a normal environment right now, but in the normal environment, and before the PowerA acquisition, which I will talk about later, you should expect revenue growth of flat to plus 2% from our business. The growth in EMEA and international should be low to mid-single digits. The growth in North America, we expect to be flat to slightly down, and that really has to do with channel shifts in North America. As the channels shift from brick and mortar to online, they go from more inefficient channels to more efficient channels. As a result of that, there should be a little bit more inventory that's taken out of the system through that transition. And that's what's really driving this negative 2%, up to negative 2% growth in North America. You have the same channel shifts happening in EMEA and international, but the channels are much more fragmented there. Nobody really commands a significant position. So we're able to manage the transition with still positive sales growth. Whereas North American channels of distribution are very, very concentrated between Walmart, Amazon, Target, Office Depot, Staples, for example. They command a huge percent of the overall market, so they have a big impact. The shifts from one to the other have a very big impact on our revenue in North America. We have, on average, 1/3 market share of the markets that we address. The addressable market is fairly large, $5.5 billion. And if you look at near adjacencies, it's roughly twice that. So even though we're big and have a leading market share, we have plenty of opportunity to grow, both in mature markets as well as in emerging markets. So it's a good position to be in. And we have a fairly customized way, bespoke way of addressing growth in each market. That's one of the advantages we have versus many of our competitors who primarily deal with non-major markets through distribution, whereas we have our own people in most countries where we participate. We've been executing on our strategy, and you could see the outlines of that in terms of expanding the global footprint, shifting the portfolio towards the consumer brands, both organically and through acquisitions, shifting out channels more to growing channels by managing that as a portfolio, and driving significant productivity out of our business and delivering significant cost synergies. And again, you can see the numbers on this slide. We've been also very, very focused on giving back to the shareholder a portion of the free cash flow that we generate, both in terms of share repurchases as well as starting in 2018 in dividends as well. What I'm going to do now is just go through some of the highlights of our product development and innovation strategy, the channels, productivity initiatives, and then talk about the implications of COVID-19 on our business and our reaction to it, and then I'll address the acquisition as well. So innovation is key for us to keep advancing our market share and driving our growth and gross profit expansion. We have 3 objectives for our product innovation strategy. We're trying to get into more attractive categories. We're trying to counteract private label with more value and justify price premiums that we demand for our products. And I'll give you examples of each one of them. To grow in more attractive product categories, I'm going to use TrueSense as an example. About 2 years ago, we entered this wellness category with a line of air purifiers under the TrueSense brand. We're going to get close to $20 million of revenue from this product line only with 3 SKUs, and after only slightly less than 2 years. The reason for that is it's a terrific product. We designed it with real points of difference, real product differentiation, and you can see them pointed out in the slides with a remote sensor pod to measure the air quality anywhere you place it, and then drive the air purifier to react to whatever that air quality is where the sensor pod is located. Pretty much all other air purifiers just clean the air around the purifier, but they don't really react to what's happening, for example, where you sleep or where your bed is, for example. So this allows you to put the sensor where you are and then drive the air purifier to react to it. The other thing that we did that's differentiated is we've designed the airflow to be very efficient and circulate the room in a much faster manner than typical air purifiers. And then finally, we worked with DuPont, who's obviously is a leader in filtration, to have the filters be DuPont branded filters to provide both efficiency but also a name recognition when we entered a new category such as air purifiers. We just introduced smart air purifiers a couple of weeks ago to allow you to both command the purifier through Alexa or remotely through app, as well as to give you visibility of air quality index on a app display, air quality index both in your house as well as in any area across the world. So this just began selling 2 weeks ago, and we have a very strong pickup with them. The plan in this category is really to expand it beyond just air purifiers to address other niches of wellness. We think wellness is something that's growing, roughly at 13% per year, and it's something that we can leverage our knowledge of business machines and our knowledge of supply chain, how to design these products as well as how to manufacture them. And given the keen consumer insights, we think we can grow significantly in the overall wellness category. Example for combating private label is our line of mead products that we introduced last year to offer independent dealers an alternative for buying private label. Now, private label primarily is bought when the consumer cares about a price point. They're willing to trade pretty much everything to get something at lower price. That's probably 25 to 30% of the market overall, and we need to offer our customers or dealers a choice to buy those price fighter SKUs from us as opposed to going to private label, and have accomplished that with these mead line of products. So that's also been very, very successful. And the last example is to justify price premiums of our products, and that's, again, innovation. That's what innovation is all about. And a couple of examples you see here are our lights shredders and our Kensington notebook docks. We introduced a line of lights shredders about 2 years ago as well. Lights is an iconic brand centered in Germany. It's been around for many, many years. Lights is a market leader in most of the categories where it participates in Germany, but Lights did not offer shredders. When ACCO merged with Acelte back in 2017, we decided to take the knowledge that the ACCO had in the shredder category and introduce a line of Lights shredders to address the particular quality and performance expectations that a Lights customer has. So we did that 2 years ago. It's been a very successful launch. We just from this line of new shredders, we're getting over $20 million a year, and roughly half of it is derived, actually over half of it is derived with Lights branded shredders. And then the last example is Kensington. Kensington worked with Microsoft to introduce a dock an exclusive dock for Surface Pro that you can see on the lower right-hand side. This has been a product that's been very well received by Microsoft's consumers and is driving sales at a roughly $400 price point for our Kensington business. Again, a lot of innovation and differentiation in this particular product. A few comments about our channels and the shifting demand from some channels to other channels. So you can see the profile of where we sell our products. Our biggest channel is independent wholesale and technology resellers. That's roughly 40% of our sales. And you can see that not only is it the biggest channel for us today, we expect it to continue to grow and take share. The other big channel for us is mass and other smaller retailers. So this would be Walmart, Target, and their international counterparts. And you can see that they're a growing proportion of our revenue as they are a channel of convenience for consumers. Rather than make a special trip, they make a trip to these stores and they're able to purchase all of their needs in this one store. The channel has been declining, and really it's been driving some of the negative comps in our business in the last couple of years because we're just so big there, is office product superstores. That's been declining, and we expect it to continue to decline. We think especially the retail arm of office product superstores will largely continue to decline. The commercial business we think is viable, but retail is going to continue to be challenged, and most of their retail sales will go to mass as well as to e-commerce. And then you could see e-commerce. This is really Amazon. It's been growing historically and expected to accelerate growth. This information is as of the actual information as of 2019. I certainly expect, given what's happening with COVID, for Amazon to take a significantly more share of our business than is depicted on this slide. So you should see a change to this with that blue line being significantly higher than it is in this particular slide. Let me shift to productivity now. We've had a Lean Six Sigma program in the company for about the last 10 years. The objective of this company is to reduce roughly 200 basis points of COGS on an annual basis. And we've been mostly successful in that program. Our long-term goal is to have our gross margins in the 33 to 34% range. We were there a couple of years ago, but certainly with the declining revenue this year due to COVID, we're going to take a hit on the gross margin. That will be lower than our goal. But I expect that with the productivity initiatives, with the pricing, and with the restoration of revenue, we'll be back to this long-term range goal in a couple of years. And then on SG&A, we've been also using robotics and Lean Six Sigma to reduce our SG&A, especially in IT and finance, where we think there's an opportunity. And we're running right now at about 20% SG&A as a percent of sales, and our long-term objective is to reduce that by roughly 100 bips or so. Let's talk about COVID. Obviously, this is something that every one of us is dealing with in our world, in our companies. Top priority when we talk about COVID is the safety of our employees. We've done a lot to ensure that our people are safe and will continue to stay safe. We've been working from home right now pretty much since middle of March. And this is all of our office employees on a global basis. For our factories in distribution centers, we implemented all of the WHO and CDC mandated protocols in terms of social distancing, temperature checks, making sure we isolate people and quarantine people, deep cleaning. So all of the things that really best-in-class companies do to protect their employees. And we've been very successful. If you look at our ratios of our people who are ill, they're lower than the community at large. And then the people that do become ill pretty much catch it outside of work, as opposed to in our facilities. All of our facilities right now are shipping. We have some that are mandated to have fewer employees in some states and in some countries, and it's a very dynamic situation because, as you know, states are constantly reviewing their particular situation depending on the hospitalization rates and ICU space that they have, and put in requirements to reduce in-person levels in a particular geographic area. But this has not had a effect on our ability to ship yet. We had some issues in Q2, but certainly if I look at Q3 and so far in Q4, has not had any implications on us yet. We've also undertook many cost reduction initiatives to make sure that we can scale our costs with revenues that are being affected. And we've been largely successful in that. I want to thank and give credit to our employees for really, I don't want to say embracing this because nobody wants to embrace something like this, but really working with a company to share in the sacrifice and the pain to make sure that we can still have a balanced return for our shareholders. You can see some of the numbers from a cost reduction standpoint on this slide. In Q1, we just delivered our normal productivity savings of around $10 million. And then in Q2, which was I think the most challenging and uncertain quarter, in addition to that, we added $23 million of additional short-term savings, including salary reduction and 401k freeze, for example. And then we also participated in many, in fact, all possible government programs all over the world to help offset the cost of employment in this difficult environment. And then you can see the numbers in the third quarter, continuing to deliver more than our standard savings, and we anticipate another $15 million of savings in Q4. Let me talk about acquisitions a little bit. Acquisitions are core to our growth. We'll look at acquisitions both from a strategic standpoint, and you can see that on the top of the slides, as well as from the financial standpoints. You can see that on the bottom of the slide. We just announced a very exciting acquisition of PowerA. PowerA is a gaming controller company, primarily a gaming controller company. They also have headphones and power charging stations, but majority of the revenue comes from controllers for Xbox, Nintendo, Switch, and Sony PlayStations. A little bit about this company. They've been around for several years. Most of their products are sold in the US. Last year's revenue was 166. This year they're expecting to reach about $200 million in revenue, and obviously with the launch of a new generation of PlayStations and Xboxes, the future for this company is really, really bright. Here there is the rationale for the acquisition. I'm just going to hit on a couple of things. Not only is it growth that was attractive to us, but also it's a platform for additional acquisitions. We are in the process of changing the profile of our company from more legacy office products, items, to really shift it to more brand, consumer, and faster growing categories. We talked about wellness as one of them, certainly computer gaming and console gaming would be another. So it allows us to expand the potential acquisition opportunities for our company. You can see the rest of it here on the slide. That's very, very attractive as well. We agreed to pay $340 million for the acquisition, plus an earnout of $55 million over the next 2 years. This acquisition is going to be accretive to our earnings and normalize free cash flow next year. We expect the acquisition to close this year before year end, and we're financing it through our revolver. And also importantly, we renegotiated with our banks to expand our covenants by half a turn from current levels for the next 6 quarters, so we can manage the acquisition of PAR-A and still leave plenty of cushion for our bank covenants. We expect the net debt to EBITDA ratio to jump to 4.2 when we close the acquisition, but then go back to a current level of 3.4 to 3.5 by the end of next year. This is real quickly what our pro forma capital structure should look like by the end of this year. This is assuming that we close the acquisition. You can see the debt, again, at this level of debt, the expectation is 4.2 times EBITDA, and you can see the weighted average interest rate of 3.9%. So with that, I am happy to take questions from the audience and speak to Joe.
Thank you, Boris. Great presentation. I'm Joe Gomes, the Noble Capital Senior Analyst who covers ACCO brands. Here are the questions I've selected from the audience, as well as a few of my own. Yeah, we'll start out, Boris. You mentioned that 75% of net sales come from brands that occupy the number 1 or 2 positions in their selected markets. Can you just comment a little bit on the ability for those brands to grow their existing market positions? Will some of that be done through going into adjacencies with those brands? Just a little bit more on that.
I think the key brands do have an opportunity to continue to grow share. You know, as I mentioned, on average, our market share is about 33%. But if I look at our key brands, it's probably anywhere from 33% to low 50s. So we still certainly have an opportunity to grow north of that. You know, I think it's unrealistic for us to have 100% market share, but it certainly is my expectations that we can get to north of 50 to 60, 70, maybe even 80%. Typically, there are 2 brands in most of the categories that we sell in. There's typically us, and then there's an opening price point brand. And you know, as I mentioned, in most categories, that opening price point is 25 to 30% or so. So we can certainly expand, take share. The other is, as you mentioned, is really moving our brands and transition our brands to other categories. And I mentioned lights. We did that effectively with lights, moving from they're very big in storage and organization. They introduced a line of laminators a few years ago, and now a line of shredders. That's another vector for their growth. We're planning to do that with 5-Star as well. 5-Star is really dominant in notebooks, school notebooks, but we're moving it beyond school notebooks to locker accessories, to learning products, to work from home products. So there's lots of opportunity for us to grow share with our existing brands.
Okay, thank you for that. And just switch gears on the school products. That's obviously a key product line for the company, accounting for about a quarter of revenues. COVID obviously has had a big impact here. Maybe you could just touch a little bit on that market. Especially we've seen a lot of various restarting strategies. I know here in New York, we've had stop, go, stop, go, stop, go, where the schools can't seem to make up their mind whether to stay open or to just teach remotely. And just maybe you could expand a little bit about more on how that is impacting the business and how you see that going forward.
Sure. We certainly have seen a negative sales trend with school products this year. The sell-in that we had in Q2 was relatively strong because a lot of us and a lot of our resellers expected school to mostly be physically open in the fall because it is so important for the kids, the way they learn, to be physically present in school. But obviously, in the majority of cases, that was did not happen. So it affected the sellout of the products that we saw in Q3, and obviously had an impact on our sales as well. It's a challenging situation because you have, on one hand, a lot of evidence that remote teaching is not effective for children, and they gain so much more by being in school, not just learning in person, but also in their social development. But on the other hand, obviously, COVID is a serious disease, has a tremendous impact not just on children, but on teachers as well. And you have a situation where teachers and teachers unions don't want to put their membership in jeopardy. So we think that this year things will pretty much stay as is. As you mentioned, New York State, I think in other states and in other counties, schools are going to go back and forth between being in a virtual mode versus physical mode, with probably younger kids trying to get back to school physically and older kids learning virtually in the remainder of the year. But we do think that with the news of vaccines being adopted in most countries, we think that by the time next school year starts in Northern Hemisphere, in call it August of 2021, we think schools will be predominantly back in person, and we'll go back to a normal situation. It will have a little bit, next year will be a little bit challenging for us in the US from a school standpoint because of the low sell-through. There's an inventory overhang with some of our channel partners. They're going to sell that inventory through, obviously, that they have. We did not take it back, but it will drive low replenishment for us in the US with some channel partners. We didn't have that in Canada. Inventory is sold through. They just didn't order as much. But in the US, they expected a better back to school in 2020 than they got. So we'll have to live with a little bit of indigestion in 2021. But we do believe schools will be back to normal.
Okay. Question coming in about the private label. How does the customer pricing and ACCO profit margin compare on the private label fighter products to the company's overall averages?
It's a little bit lower. We only do a private label for us, and these kind of private label substitute for us is roughly a small percent of our business. Private label itself is about 6% of our sales. But if I look at our mead products, for example, that we sell at private label price points, it'll probably be, together with private label, maybe 10% of our sales. And we only do it if it is delivering a dollar contribution, and it helps us offset some of our fixed costs in our factories. So, we don't like doing private label for private label sake, but if it helps us to maintain category, helps us to offer good, better, best, and upsells, step up to our consumers, then we do it, and it's overall accretive to our profitability. But if I look at from a gross margin standpoint, those types of products will deliver, probably 10 points lower of gross margin than the company average.
What's your sense of when offices will begin reopening in the U.S., Europe, and how do you think companies will use office facilities in the future?
We think that most companies will only go back to the offices starting maybe late spring, early summer. We think that until that time, people will work virtually as most companies are doing today. It's really after a critical mass gets vaccinated, people will feel comfortable opening their offices. We certainly do believe that post-COVID, most companies will go back to the office. They will not be in the office. We don't believe they will not be in the offices full time. We think that the predominant model post-COVID will be a hybrid model where people will work from home a couple of days a week and will go from the offices a couple of days a week. From a demand for our products, we think that it's largely going to be unaffected, because as long as you're in the office, you will drive demand for our products, and when you'll use your office as an inventory closet for home. So as opposed to going to the store, which we're doing today, and buying stuff as you're working from home, the couple of days you'll be in the office, you will also replace whatever notebooks, staplers, Kensington mice, whatever else you need for your home. But we do think that the kind of the future of the work will be more a hybrid future, as opposed to everybody's going to be in the offices.
Okay. Let's switch gears and talk a little bit about some of the new products. For TrueSense, how much growth do you expect from that product in the near future? And you've talked about some other new product launches. Could you give some examples of what they are and timing of when that will occur?
TrueSense, as I mentioned, we should finish this year close to $20 million in sales. I certainly expect that to continue to grow next year and grow significantly next year. And over time, I do expect that TrueSense will be a $100 million product line for us. We're looking at other product categories within wellness. So one of the categories that we think makes sense now that we offer air purifiers is humidifiers. So we're certainly looking to introduce TrueSense humidifiers. It may happen either next year or in early 2022. We also think there are opportunities, other opportunities that I don't want to be specific on for competitive reasons, but there are other opportunities in other categories under TrueSense brand.
Let's talk a little bit about PowerA. Got some questions in on that. What does the acquisition mean from a bigger picture standpoint about ACCO brands and its product portfolio? I think you touched briefly on about further increasing your presence in the gaming market. One of the questions we're getting here is, any specific categories you're targeting, specifically premium price point brands, or would you look more at entry price type products?
I think the most important thing about PowerA is it changes the growth profile of our business. If you look at PowerA just by itself, it should add about 100 bips to our growth profile, both from a revenue standpoint and an EBITDA standpoint. So the numbers that I was sharing with you before, 0 to 2% growth should become 1 to 3% growth just from PowerA. So I think that's a really important thing, and that's something that we've been trying to do through the recent acquisitions that we made, and we're very optimistic that PowerA will be that catalyst to change the growth profile of the business. If I look at opportunities for further acquisitions and further growth, I think it's a little bit premature to be specific on that. We do think that there are other opportunities. We've talked to PowerA executives. They think there are other opportunities for them to grow inorganically. So, we've been doing roughly one acquisition per year. The focus over the next year will be to integrate PowerA to make sure that we can get the benefits of the acquisition. But then come 2022, I'm sure we'll have another discussion on this, and I can be more specific at that time.
With this acquisition, what are some of the risks? Are you going to be competing with some of the larger tech companies? And what impact do you think the recent gaming console launches will have on PowerA's business?
Let me start with the second part of your question. We think that's going to be a very positive tailwind for the business. The last time that both Xbox and PlayStation upgraded their products was 2013 and 2014. So there's a lot of pent-up demand for increased capabilities and increased performance. These products, they were launched in the middle of November, and they're sold out. So demand for the products is really, really strong. I'm sure both Sony and Microsoft will be able to fulfill the demand over the next few months, and that should be a very positive catalyst for accessory sales, including PowerA's sales. So we're very excited about that particular situation. If you look at Joe, the first part of the questions was about brand and premium.
Well, this one here was on the what kind of risks are you going to be competing with some of the larger tech companies?
Right. PowerA has had a very productive coexistence with the console manufacturers. They help them develop an ecosystem that drives demand for consoles, that drives demand for software. They, even though they offer products in the similar categories, they typically offer very premium price points and very premium functions to their products, which leaves space for PowerA and a couple of other vendors to offer products in mainstream price points. So I really don't see it as a competition. I think it's more of an ecosystem that PowerA and some of these major technology companies work in. And you have to remember that these technology companies actually have to license PowerA to be able to sell products using the names and certifications from them. So it's a synergistic relationship as opposed to an antagonistic relationship, and that's certainly when we done our due diligence, that's what came out from that research.
Okay, and one more question here. I wonder, we talked a couple different spots about capital allocation. And I wonder if you might just kind of bring it all together, what your capital allocation plans are for 2021.
For 2021, our primary focus for our free cash flow will be to continue to fund the dividend, which at $25 million, we don't think that's a huge challenge, and then to use the majority of the available free cash flow to reduce the debt. I mentioned we want to get from pro forma 4.2 to roughly 3.4, 3.5 by the end of the year. So the focus will be on reducing debt. And then, after we accomplish that, then we could go back to being a little bit more balanced between debt reduction, share repurchases, and dividends. But the priority is dividends and reducing debt in 2021.
And just a follow up on that, I think the company's long-term goal was more about 2.5. Is that still what you would hope to get to over time?
Yes, that's correct. Our long-term goal is to be in the 2.0 to 2.5 range. We were at 2.6, 2.7 before we made, before COVID, before we made the PowerA acquisition. We think we can, as I mentioned, deliver to 3.4, 3.5 by the end of next year, and then get into the 2s by the end of the following year.
Great. Well, Boris, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for helping us get a better understanding of the ACCO story. If you would like to get the independent research I've written on ACCO brands, go to channelchek.com and type in the company name or the ticker ACCO in the search box in the top left company data section of the site. Again, thanks to CEO Boris Elisman from ACCO Brands. Everyone have a great day.
This has been the Virtual Roadshow series brought to you by Channelchek and Noble Capital Markets. Log into Channelchek or subscribe to our YouTube channel to get the full catalog of roadshows and C-suite interview channelcasts. Register for Channelchek's no-cost premium content and receive notifications of new releases from both series. Thank you for joining us.